What's up, guys? And thank you for tuning in to our first episode of Pave the Way. We're so excited to go on this journey with you. We're going to be bringing on guests from all different walks of life with the main goal to motivate us to be better versions of ourselves. Our first guest is Raymond Phillips. Raymond is a good friend and a local entrepreneur who has found success in several fields. Today, he's going to discuss the highs and lows of being an entrepreneur, and he really drops a lot of wisdom on us. So I'm so excited for you guys to hear what he has to say. So without further ado, we hope you enjoy the show. Well, today on the show, we've got my good friend, Raymond Phillips. Raymond, thank you for being here. And I'm just so honored to have you here today for our first episode. So tell the world a little bit about yourself and kind of what you do.
So like where I came from and how I ended up here and
Absolutely.
that kind of...
Your story.
Yeah, we'd like to hear your story.
Oh man, you don't want to hear that story. I'll start part of it.
Yeah.
So I've been in Paulding County since 1989. And people think it's kind of weird that I say that banking got me here, because people see me and they're like, man, he's never been a banker. He's not a banker. Even when I was in banking, I tell my friends, it's like, what are you doing? I was like, man, I'm banking. I said, no, really, what are you doing? But how I got there was I had an entrepreneurial spirit earlier on in life, and so my life has been a life of elimination, a process of elimination. I've worked probably 30 different jobs and still doing things and coming and going, and I'm okay with that because I learned what I don't like, but I've also learned the things that I do like, and I love what I do now, so that's pretty cool that I don't go to work every day. But earlier on, I ended up in banking as a collections officer in Luthersville, Georgia. Wow. My dad called it Lucifersville because he said that's where the devil landed when God kicked him out of heaven. So, and it was kind of a bad place. But I ended up there, the bank got acquired. I ended up at Bank of Coweta through Synovus. I got through Synovus Bank, and Bank of Coweta was owned by Synovus. So I started there, and I was a collections officer, and the first 2 days I was there, I didn't even own a coat or a tie, but I had this big old polyester tie that I put on, this big coat. And I walked into the office. This guy named, two of the people most influential business-wise for me was really, really early on, and it just impacted my life in such a way that I've never forgot it. But a guy named Scott Wilson, he was the president of that bank, Bank of Coweta, and the chief lending officer was a guy named Andy Williams, not the singer, but a different Andy Williams. And they called me into the office, and Scott was pretty cool. He looked like Mr. Clean, had a blue and white seersucker suit on, white shoes, bald-headed. I mean, he was built demanded respect just by looking at him. So he called me in. He got up from behind the power seat, which is his desk. He came and sat down, sort of like we are, and Andy and I were sitting across from him. And he called me Champ. That was my name back home. And that's what it was in this little old bank. It was a little country bank. And so now here I'm at Bank of Coweta, which is a real bank. And he sits me down and he says, Champ, we don't, right off the bat, I knew they were going to fire me because they didn't have collection officers. I knew they didn't. He said, Champ, we don't have collection officers. And I'm like, yeah, I can take this big old tie off here in just a second. I know where this is going. And he said, but Andy thinks he can make something out of you. And of course, I have no college education, nothing. I'm just a country boy. And I said, yes, sir, what would that be? He said, well, if you'll stick around, Andy, if you're willing, Andy says that he can make you a loan officer in a bank if you think that's something you would like to do. Wow. Nothing like I thought. It was like, no way that was going to happen. I thought they were going to fire me. And, no real reason for them to do that. But I come to realize that they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. Yeah. Really, it was like, and right off the bat, he said, we're going to give you, and they were paying me by the hour. And he said, we're going to give you $2 an hour raise. Well, back in 1986, that was like a lot of money. And so I was like, man, wow. And so they did that to me off and on, gave me some projects. I did really well with them. He called me back in there about 6 weeks later and asked me about a project. He said, hey, Champ, Andy says you're doing really, really well. He said, man, we're proud. They spoke to me. They managed me like I needed to be managed, which was just, they paid me well. They encouraged me. I needed words of affirmation. I kind of know my love languages. That's one of them, words of affirmation, and so they made me feel good and made me believe in myself. And so I learned banking. Became a loan officer there and ended up at another bank, a family-owned bank back in Hootersville, Greenville, Georgia. Yeah, it's a little podunk town. Short story is, I ended up going to the Athens to banking school. Met Rosemary Butler there, who was working at the bank here. She passed away in the last year or two, but she's the one that got me here. And said at school, she said, "Hey, we're opening up a branch. We're going to need a branch manager. Would you be interested?" How and why that happened, I don't know. But I recognized that opportunity. I called my Uncle Ken, who lived here, and I said, "Hey, what I need to do?" And he said, "Man, I'm from Manchester, Georgia, but my home is in Paulding County.
Wow.
You need to pack your bags and you need to come up here and make this your home." And it was great advice.
And that was in '89?
That was in 1989.
After
I came here in October of '89.
Of banking experience?
Yeah, like 4 or 5. I had a total of about 8 or 9 total, because after I got here, this is the land of milk and honey in my book, Paulding County, because I came from where Meriwether County has gone down in population in the last 20 years.
Wow.
Paulding County, when I moved here, there's 33,000 people. Now there's 180,000 people. I always said that you could open up a lemonade stand and make a decent living here. Yeah. Which may lead into why am I involved in the community? Because, man, I really felt like I owed the community something. Yeah. I mean, this place has been good to me. Mm-hmm. And I'm really envious of people like yourselves that, I don't know if you were born and raised here or not, but I know Rob was.
We all were.
And were you?
We all were, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, man, y'all may not appreciate it quite as much as me, because I know what it's like not to have, y'all still probably live around your family, your friends, your school, your classmates. None of that's for me. I'm kind of on an island here, but I've created a lot of great friends, y'all being part of them, and my own little family. And, so that's how I ended up here.
That's beautiful. That's
wild. And then while in the banking, so how did I end up, I don't know if y'all lead into this question or not, but how did I end up working for myself?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sitting in the bank and I'm making loans to people, making hundreds of thousands, $1 million, and I'm loaning them money, and I'm sizing them up, right?
Yeah.
I'm like,
seeing their character.
Yeah, and I'm like, this guy's no smarter than I am. It's like, why is he? And it dawned on me that he was just willing to take risk, and that's what it is. It's just stepping out, and this is my short story on that. Is just stepping out, just finally just saying, hey man, I'm going to risk it all, because it's hard to leave security.
Yeah.
Somebody else is generating the business. When I was at the bank, somebody else was saying, hey, here's you a check. I didn't have to really work on how it got to me. Right. I just had to do my job. But when you go out on your own, and y'all know this, is all of a sudden it becomes, I either got to work or I starve.
That's right. Especially when you learn payroll tax.
Yeah, and then that's so really the way it goes. You start learning, make mistakes along the way, right? Yeah. And your learning curve, I found out my learning curve just needs to be small. I'm going to have a learning curve. It's going to be some downsides. But I want it to go up, and then maybe a little dip because I made a mistake. So that's how I sized up the people that came into my office. And finally, I went into business with one of my customers in the building business. And
building houses?
Yeah, building houses, and they were hugely successful. And I worked with them about 2 years, and then went out on my own. I want to share a little bit can I share a little bit of Jesus right here?
Absolutely, yeah. Please.
So I had never prayed for anything, and I appreciate you opening us up in prayer before we started here just a minute ago. But I had never prayed for anything with like, Lord, if you'll just make this happen, and if you'll just remove this obstacle, show me that this is where you would have me to go. Now, I believe that there's active waiting and passive waiting, and I think God calls us to actively wait, which is, I'm going to keep moving forward until you say no, until you make it clear that no is the answer. Because we could all sit around and just say, well, I'll wait till you come give me a big check, or you have somebody come by and just offer me a position. We have to do our part. That's in my head. So I prayed, man, Lord moved a bunch of obstacles, ended up with a little bit of money, At the time I was making $32,000 a year, and
What year is this? What year is this?
This is 1996, 95, 96.
Okay. So eight-ish, 7-ish loan officer years.
Yeah, exactly. And hey, man, get this, is I thought that if I could just make $1,000 for however old I was, I would be killing it.
Dude.
I know, man, isn't that crazy? I love that. That's like that's cool. Short-sighted. And, but I'm real, that's where I was. Like, man, if I could just make, at the time I was thinking I was making 28 and I was trying to get to 32. That was about how old I was at the time. Yeah, and I was like, man, if I made 32,000, I'd be killing it. Yeah. But so I stepped out and I had this little bit, the Lord just removed all these obstacles. And so my customer and I, we worked the things out, and so I went to work. A couple years later, it wasn't all great.
It's hard.
You know, yeah. So I left almost ready to go dig a ditch. And the Lord kind of pricked my heart at this point, because I was like, Lord, where have you been? You know, what the heck? How am I ending up in this ditch almost, you know? And when I reflected at that point and I looked back, it was like I had prayed for all this. The Lord had delivered. He's like, man, this is what I want you to do. This is where I want you to go. And it's like I looked back and I said, thank you, God. I've got it from here. And he's like, he's not a very intrusive God, you know, in my book. You know, he's like, are you sure?
Yeah, you sure about that?
You're sure about that? Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I got it. I mean, all this wasn't verbalized, but I can look back. And so I just went on my own. I didn't pray again that I was still going to church, leading a Sunday school class and doing some things, but I was not praying for the fulfillment of the business, or was I going in the right direction? And I wasn't. I know the Lord sent me there for a specific reason. I know what it was. It was to minister and witness to these people that I was in business with. Failed terribly at it. It was terrible.
The business part or the ministering part?
Both.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. You know, because I should have been ministering to them. I think the business would have been fine because we would have developed a Christian relationship, right? Instead, it was more secular. And so when I walked away and I looked back and the Lord got me out of that situation, miracle. In the meantime, I was in the bonding business. I got in the bail bond business in 1993. Okay. I was still I was still banking. And Judge Foster was on the board of directors at the time. He was the only one who said, I don't think you can do both, because I had exposed to him. I told him I was looking at doing this and I needed their permission. And Judge Foster says, I'm against it. You know, I don't think you can do both. Everybody else was okay with it, and so I ended up doing it. And I did both for about 2 years, and banking and bail bonding. But I love Judge Foster because he's the kind of person that I think I am, which is, hey, man, this is what I'm thinking. You know, and I'm just being honest with you. We can still be friends, right?
He tells you how he feels.
Yeah, and that's the way I hope that we can be, you know, whether it's
100%.
Politics or whatever.
100%.
It's like, man, I think you're wrong. I'm against this, you know, but hey, man, I still love you.
Absolutely.
You know, we should be able to carry on the conversation. Anyway, I know I kind of got off on a rabbit trail. You may have something else you want to take me down.
I think it's so cool to, when, you know, you reflect on your journey of how it all unfolds, because even for us with starting our business, it's hard, you know, so there's so many trials and tribulations you go through in that world. So I think it's so cool for you to reflect on that. What led you to, so when you leave this next journey, what gets you into where you're at today, where you have, you know, the bail bond still, you have a pawn shop, you have a roofing company. What other business do you have? Is that the three main?
My wife has a hair salon. I had a Line-X spray and bed line business at one time. That's how I ended up with the building. And so I know that's part, but my weakness is I like to create and I get bored really easily and quickly. You know, I'm like, okay, man, this is going good. Let's turn this over. Let somebody else kind of run it. I want to go do the next thing.
I relate to that.
Yeah, you know, and it's, but most of my friends that are hugely successful, they kind of stick with the one thing and they grow it and they scale it and they make them huge and then they sell it. You know, I think that's really, if I were to share with anyone about entrepreneurship, it would be figure out what it is that you're doing and you're doing it well. I mean, the stuff that we do well, but I just kind of like keep it small, and the real money and the real success is larger. It's just expanding and spreading, and it requires more work, you know, more risk maybe, but it's way more rewarding. So that's kind of where I was.
And so when you were doing banking and bail bonds, and then it sounds like each time there's just a new opportunity that arises. Do you know of a reason, or is there a reasoning behind why these opportunities arise? Were you networking? Were you looking for opportunity into bail bonds? Were you looking for opportunity into roofing, or did you just start building houses and then roofing showed up?
That's a good question. And anybody ask me like, how did I'm not a very smart person. I know this, but I think I'm really good at recognizing opportunity.
There you go. Yeah.
And
that's what it sounds like when I just hear the story.
I know it when it's coming by, and I'm like, man, if I could latch on to, how could I scale that or optimize that or get involved with that and make it instant? Is it feasible for me? Because some things just aren't. It's like, I can't see that. I've given up a lot of properties and a lot of opportunities because I couldn't see the forest for the trees. It's like, it's too big. And then somebody does it and they're hugely successful. I'm like, I had that chance and didn't take it. But I think it's just more just recognizing an opportunity.
How did you get tied up with Jimmy when it come to the pawn shop side of it? Like, was he a customer at the time or?
Good question. And Jimmy Taylor was a friend that I had from way back from Greenville days. He was a lender.
Like Jimmy. Nice
a
guy.
long time ago. So about 6 months goes by and Jimmy comes back and he goes, hey man, I got to get out of this janitorial services business. He said, were you serious about a pawn shop? And I said, Jimmy, I've got a job. And it's right here. This is what I do. I like the idea of owning one. I said, I'll put up the equity if you put up the sweat equity. I'll put up the cash. He said, let's do it. And, it kind of shocked me. I was thinking he would be like, man, I don't have time for that. I don't even know what I'm doing. I was like, well, neither do I. We'll just figure this out as we go. And again, it was just taking the risk. And I don't even know that I saw that opportunity. I just had the space. Jimmy showed up. And so we spent some money. I did a pro forma. I was like, I figured it was going to be about 18, 19 months before we started cash flowing to where I wouldn't have to start, because I started writing Jimmy checks day one, or the week, at least the first week of that when we got open. And he had a number he needed to live by, so I was writing checks, putting inventory in. The money that we were making loans with was my money, so I was doing all this. Well, in 13 months, we were cash flowing.
Wow.
So we were ahead of schedule.
Wow.
And so then we could just take the money that the business was making, and then that's what we could lend. And I've really never drawn a whole lot of money out of it. I just like to see it grow.
Yeah.
And you got to have cash to grow. So for 2 years, Jimmy ran that place 6 days a week, did not take a single day off for 2 years.
Wow.
I mean, he sweat equity his way into it, and I gave him 49% of the company. I mean, I was like, man,
as he deserved.
You've earned it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You've earned it. And he was wanting to continue to grow and all, and this is when he bought Lucky's, the convenience store.
I remember that, yeah.
And I said, man, people thought I was buying a convenience store. They're like, hey, man, are you buying a convenience store? I said, I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm not buying a convenience store. Well, I didn't know Jimmy was buying a convenience store. They just associated the two of us together.
When I got to know Raymond several years ago, I got, I really, like Rob said earlier, I was just attracted to him. I thought, man, this guy is a good dude. He's business savvy, and I've always had that entrepreneur spirit in me as well. So I respect people who do it at a high level. So I've always had great respect for Raymond. But what I learned is when I got to know Raymond and got to talking to people, it seemed like everybody in our county knows Raymond. Like everybody that you talk to knows Raymond. And that says a lot about the person you are. But was that concerted effort in your networking? I know you're on several boards. I know you do a lot within our community. You're in Rotary. That's how we're tied together. So was that an effort that you did, or was it something that came natural to you? Because I know a lot in today's world, people are scared of networking. People want to do it all from their text message or computer screen, but you do a really good job of networking.
Real quick, I wanted to let you know we also own a couple of different insurance agencies in the local area, and I've lived in Dallas, Georgia my entire life. If you guys ever need a quote on your auto, your home, your business, or your life insurance, keep us in mind. Now let's get back to the show.
Tell us about that.
I've never really thought about it. Way early on, when I was at the bank, at Community Trust Bank, when I started here, Ronnie Austin and Genevieve Cole, they were, you need to go out in the community. And I was already doing that back home. I was president of the little Kiwanis Club in Greenville, Georgia. I mean, there was 12 people, but I was leading the opportunity was there.
Yeah.
They just didn't want to do it. And they were like, hey man, the new guy on the club, you be the president. But it gave me the opportunity to kind of go and do those things. But I just have a deep sense of civic duty. I've never really thought about the networking part. There are times You know, it's like being part of the chamber. It's useless to be a member of the chamber if you're not going to network, because they can only do so much. They can just offer opportunities for you to go get seen, get heard, you know, to meet people. And there is huge value in that. I've never really thought about the networking part of it. There are times when I'm thinking about it. And one of the people, what was his name that had the realty company? Harry Keener. If I don't know if you ever knew Harry Keener, but when you saw him, I had 3 dozen of his business cards, because each time he'd see me, he'd say, "Here you go, Raymond." You know, I said, "Man, I got one. I know I have another one." You know, I mean, he was just good at it. It was just, and so there's huge value, and he was very successful in the real estate business. And then at some point, I always thought it was weird that because I'm really a bail bondsman, that I had an opportunity to serve on the chamber and be the president of the chamber, or the chairman of the chamber. I thought it was weird. You know, they got a bail bondsman up here. You know, it's kind of like, well, I'm on the bottom end of this whole thing.
Am I really qualified?
Yeah. Or why do they, you know, do they really know? I wonder what they're saying when they say, yeah, what does he do? He's a bail bondsman. You know, or when to go to other events or what have you. But I enjoy giving back. You know, I don't mean that in the sense I don't like really saying it.
Yeah.
Because it's not about me. I don't want it to be about me. You know, I would rather at the end of the day that someone say that was a great group of people that showed up, the Rotary showed up, or whoever showed up, and, you know, they did this great deal, this great deed for these people. And, you know, that I think that's more the value for me. It's funny that you say people know me. It may be because I got them out of jail, you know, or I've loaned them money, or
one of their TV.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Some of the best compliments I ever got was when I was building houses, and built a lot of them, is to have people call me back and say, "Hey, man, I saw that house you built me. Would you build me another one?" Wow.
That's a huge compliment.
Isn't that huge?
Yeah.
I was like, man, I must have done that one right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way it is. Even now, it's customer service is our thing. There's a friend of mine in the roofing business. We're 5 stars. We just hit our 100th review. And one of my friends gave us a 4-star review. It dropped me to 4.9, you know, and I was like, "Ray, man, what the heck, man? Are you mad at us? You know, just don't leave a review if you're not going to do 5, because we just want to give stellar service."
Yeah.
You know, and he's just one of those guys, well, man, if it went like over the top, I don't give 5 stars. I was like, well, then give us 0. Just ignore us, you know, don't give the review. So it's the same thing in the pawn shop. One of the coolest things is when customers come in, I'm going to jump boxes a little bit with the pawn shop, is one of the coolest things, and I've got a dozen videos or pictures off of our video where our staff is praying with people.
Wow.
Man.
I've watched you do that. I've been in there before when you done that for people, and it was powerful.
Oh, man.
Those people that come in there, a lot of times they're needing some serious help.
So which drives me to, okay, all right, so why am I in the bonding business? Why am I in the pawn shop business? You know, there's very few people that come through either one of those doors that are not hurting in some shape, form, or fashion, right?
Yeah.
And I think the Lord says, because it's your responsibility to witness, to minister to them, some shape, form, or fashion. If it's just being kind to them, if it's just giving them money when they don't have anything worth lending on, or if it's just having a prayer with them, give them hope. Now, I fail miserably. And you know, it sounds like, man, we do this all the time, man. We do it great. It's not true. You know, there's times I catch myself, someone's driving out, and I'm like, man, I know you pricked my heart, and I didn't do anything. You know, that's sad.
And that kind of drives back into that civic duty that you had mentioned earlier. It really does. Like the things you do at the pawn shop, at the bond shop, I don't know what to call it, the bondsman place. That is civic duty that you're doing through that, especially if you're ministering to them. That's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about serving. That's what it's hard. That's what a lot of people can't grasp. But when you read a lot of books and you really understand servant leadership, like the more people you serve, the more influence you have. And I think that's been a powerful thing that I will compliment you on, that you truly serve with a humble spirit. And that's huge. I mean, that's huge. And I know you probably don't like us tooting your horn that much, but it is true that you truly do that for our community. And I just think that's powerful, for everybody in your community to know and respect you. It's something that I really look up to.
It's something to strive for, honestly.
Yeah.
And I have a kind of an off-topic, on-topic question, but other than Andy Williams and what was the other man at the bank?
Scott Wilson.
Scott Wilson. Other than these guys, did you ever have like a big-time mentor? Because you're definitely a self-developed man that had a civic duty that wanted to do good in the world. But did you ever have like a person or a group of people through this Rotary or through anything that was like, Champ Raymond, this is how you're going to do it, man? Like, here's how.
No.
Yeah.
That's sad.
And does that turn you into that character now?
Yeah, I want to be that
because
guy.
of that? Yes.
Absolutely. All right, so I may have some family that watch this or what have you, and they're going to be upset with me for saying this, but mostly my dad, and I watched how poorly he did it.
Was he a businessman?
He was entrepreneur, yeah. He did some things, but it was always on the edge of wrong, and it's always just you could do it right and make money, so why teeter on doing things illegal or whatever, but he just couldn't help himself, and so to me it's sort of like the guy that says, hey, I'm an alcoholic because my dad was an alcoholic. Well, malarkey. Yeah. That's all the more reason not to be. Yeah. So you saw what it was and what it did. Well, that's kind of the way I've been with this. Now my dad made me civic minded. Yep. My dad was a Pied Piper. I mean, we would all want to follow him out into traffic. I mean, he just was really good. He's a great storyteller. Him and Uncle Remus, were great.
Uncle Remus.
Yeah, you don't remember him, do you? But just great storyteller, and just really and a very magnetic personality. And so I told my dad this one time, and I may be getting off subject, but I told him, I said, Dad, there are 1,000 things about you that I would love to be like. I mean, a memory, could tell a story, it's and could get real spiritual. But I told him, I said, but there's at least 100 I don't want to be like. He didn't hear the 1,000.
Oh.
Yeah, he heard the 100.
Yeah.
And it crushed him. And I told him, and he said, what are you talking about? I said, Dad, you could lead people to Christ. You got a great personality. You got a great mouth. You know the Bible. I said, but you're leading people down the wrong road. It's just not the right one. And so then he got to where later, when he'd be telling a story, he said, I know, you think I ought to have been an evangelist. When he'd always like say something, to remind me.
100.
Yeah. But so mostly it's just, I didn't really have anybody really that I can think of. I always think of Scott and Andy, that they had read the book. Mm-hmm. They had probably got together and said, all right, how do we manage this young man? And man, they nailed it. Yeah. So I've tried to think of that with the people that I get to manage, and I fail a lot of times. And the styles are a lot different. The older generation gets managed differently than the younger generation. That's a fact. So you got to kind of be moving all the time about how to do this. One of the biggest things that I like is it's the people that work with me, because no one works for me. We all work together. You seldom will you hear me say my employees or my business. I just don't like saying that. I want to say, I work with, like if Jill, I say, each time I introduce her, I work with Jill. I don't have to tell anybody that I write her check. Everybody knows, what is it? To me, it's my ego if I say anything. It's not like over at my place or I'm saying, no, over at the pawn shop, over at the roofing company. One of the biggest regrets I have is that I named the roofing company after me. Seriously, I was like, man, because that kind of feels egotistical. But then, all right, so I'm jumping boxes again. All right, I just thought of something else. There's a reason, why did I get in the roofing business? Because that's the newest thing, and it's only 4 or 5 years old. It's because the bonding business was playing out. There's a movement, no cash bail, let everybody OR on their own recognizance. Just let them go, write them a ticket. And we see what's happening now as a result of that. I mean, we've hung around long enough in Georgia to where a lot of these states like, whoa, man, defund the police, all that. Well, you see what happens when all that starts happening. But I saw it coming, and I was like, man, I got to do something else because I'm used to this stream of income, right? Mm-hmm. When that goes away, I need something else. And so I said, what, in my head, entrepreneurial-like, I'm like, what can I get involved with that doesn't require inventory, that doesn't require testing? There's no licensing. Now, it's sad. There should be, because anybody can just take a sticker now and stick it on the side of their truck and say they're a roofer. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are paying the price for that because, You know, they want the cheapest that they can get. They're out there. You can get that. I'm into customer service. I want to do it right. Yeah. I want people to call me back. Yeah, I want 5 stars. Yeah. So a friend of mine was in the roofing business. He said, man, I just do one a week. If I can just average one a week at the end of the year, this is what I make. And I'm like, well, dang, that's all right. That's what I'll do. I'll just do one a week. You know, I'll just kind of start that. And so for about a year and a half, I really didn't do anything. And then this guy, Neil, comes along and he's like, hey man, you know, you got anything? He was working at a car lot. And I said, man, I got something, but you know, if you want to sell some roofs, we can do some roofs. He said, yeah, let me in. Well, man, he knew more about roofing day 2 than I knew on day, 2 years later. And it really wasn't that he didn't. It's just that he's that good of a salesman. There's a book, talking about books, I read one called Blue Marlin. And the concept of it is just say yes. Mm-hmm. Hey man, can you do this? Yes. Hey, how do we do that? We're going to figure this thing. We're going to figure this out. Yep. You can always go back and say, hey man, I'm just too busy. I can't get to it. Or but in the meantime, let me figure it out. Give me an opportunity to figure this out. And so when Neil came on board, he was selling roofs, and we figured this out real quick. But when I was with the guy that taught me into roofing, like I said, I didn't know much or anything about it. So I told him, I said, I'll sell some roofs. You just show me the way. You put them on. I don't need the money, right? I'm giving it away. I'm learning. I don't need the money. I don't want the money. Because I needed him to invest in me, because otherwise, why would he be willing to split any money with me or do anything when he's doing his own thing anyway? Mm-hmm. He said, all right, well, you get the roofs. And he said, but I'm not going to do it for free. We'll just split whatever you get. How about that? I thought, man, because he's a good guy. Yeah. I'm like, all right, man, we'll do that. So one of the first roofs I sold was the city of Hiram. It was a huge, their city hall and their civic center. And so Bert and I would go down there with the crew. We do this job, and I do 8 or 9 more. The last one I did by myself was Miss Bobby Cooper's. Not Bobby Cooper, Bobby Lee. And I tell Bert, I'm like, hey man, we got one more to do today. I need to go over here and put this little garage roof on for Miss Bobby Lee. He said, just take one over there and do it. I said, man, no, it's us. He goes, you know as much about it as I do now. Wow. Go over there, do your own thing. He cut me loose. And then, so that was kind of the genesis of it. And then Neil comes on board, and now we're doing, we did 126 roofs last year. We're shooting for 200 this year. And,
that's more than one a week.
More than one a week. Yeah, I know. Well, but then there's an entrepreneurial lesson in that too, which is when you grow, so do all the other expenses. And there's a middle ground there that's like, I'm doing all this much more work and not making any more money if I was just doing one a week. Yeah. But the real money is one step further. So hang in there and get to the one step further. And that's where I am with the roof. And I do want to scale it and make it into not necessarily an empire, but something that's I can leave, to my children or what have you.
Absolutely.
And we're in that phase as well with our businesses. It's like, the goal is to grow, but you have to grow methodically. Yeah. Because sometimes you can almost have too many growing pains if you're not careful. So that's a big point right there. And then another question that I had is in that same vein of all the people, like Alex said, that kind of had an impression on you as you went through your life. I know a lot of times in today's society, there's a lot of people that are dream killers, that, you'll tell them your vision, your goal, and they'll literally shoot you down. What would you say to people out there that are wanting to start, but they don't have anybody in their corner that believes in them? Real quick, we wanted to let you guys know that we are licensed realtors. So if you're looking to buy, sell, or even get a guaranteed cash offer on your home, we have a team of agents that's ready to go to work for you. So if we can help you with that, please let us know. Now, let's get back to the show.
I think it's a biblical premise as well, is whenever somebody says something to me, I have to do some self-analyzing. It's like, if they were to say I was fat, I have to look, am I? Yeah. Otherwise I can just believe it. Yeah. That's my other choice. So is there any truth to what they're saying, is first of all. It should, that thought, dream killer thought, I should be able to go in and say, all right, well, let me do this. Let me run these numbers again. Because am I just operating off of I've got this idea and that's really where I am. Mm-hmm. So let's run the numbers again. Let's just see. And it's like, no, I think there's something here. Well, find another friend, because there's some other people out there that will sit down with you and be honest with it, and may sit down with these people or whoever it is that's got this idea and say, let's just look at it. You know, let's see what it takes really to get down here. And it can be demoralizing sometimes because it is like, man, I thought I had a great idea, but it does look pretty bad, you know, after we lay it all out. Well, having been on some boards, I have seen people invest all their money into a great idea, a great concept, a great thing. And they've just spent all their retirement, they spent everything, and then a year later, it's all gone, the dream's gone, and they're just nothing to show for it.
Yeah.
Are y'all familiar with McKenna Farms?
Oh, yeah.
So Jessie Moore came in. I was on the board of United Way, and they were giving away grants at the time. This is at the very genesis of her getting started. And she hears me say this to her, and I'm embarrassed to say what I said to them. It was about a $10,000 grant. She comes in, she tells her story about the horse, the hippotherapy, and this dream, you know, that she's already kind of moved a little bit along the way. And we just got through with something else, and I see somebody give all their, you know, there was a teacher, gave all their retirement away, and a year later had nothing to show for it. And so I was kind of burnt on that. She's got this dream, and I'm like, and she does her thing, she leaves, and I look at the board, and I'm like, man, it's a great idea. What a lovely person. What a great heart. But it'll never make it. That's what I said. And here we are 25 years later, and they've turned it into this huge thing, you know, because I was a dream killer, right?
That's wild.
I mean, it's like, don't listen to me. You know, she took it on and found the right people and did the right thing, and it's just a huge, huge success now. So sometimes it can be us. It can be me. I don't want to be that person, but I don't want people just to kind of count their dreams on anything that I have to say.
Yeah.
There are good people like to come around, and, you know, and you've come to me on occasion about things, and we should be able to bounce things off each other. And for the most part, it's, do I know that person? You know, I hope it'd be like me. If y'all heard that I did something or somebody's starting this rumor about me, I would hope that you knew me well enough and said, wrong person.
Yeah, that ain't him.
That's not him.
Yeah.
I will testify to this day. I know that person. I know Raymond. He don't do that. And that in fact, I'm not going to prove you to be a liar.
Yeah.
You know, that's and there's friends that I want my staff and the people that work with me. I want all of them to know that if they come to me with something, that they're going to get an honest answer, not just something that's going to be good for me.
Yeah.
Because if things good for me, I need them to stay. But that's selfish.
And that's a tough balance in wanting to give sound advice if you really feel like there is potholes in their plans and not wanting to kill their dreams. You know what I mean? That's a tough balance as somebody who really cares about them and advising them the right way. Because you probably didn't have any intent in saying it's not going to work with McKenna Farms.
Yeah, no.
It was, you're just really looking out for those red flags. But that leads me to the point that I wanted to make is what we preach to our guys is, I love what Jim Rome says about if you work hard on yourself and your job, you're going to end up being successful. Yeah. So like the people that if I was talking to somebody that had a dream and that's getting killed or that's not making any progress, like go to work on yourself, go to work on the dream, go to work on the vision and make yourself better, make yourself more valuable to the world.
Totally.
And that's what I would recommend. And I feel like a lot of times we're scared to do stuff. Like that fear or anxiety keeps us, like, even with starting the show, we've been dragging our feet for 9 months doing it, but it's sometimes that fear, that anxiety, it's good to just, if you can constantly be getting better every day.
And working on yourself can be, if you're a roof salesman, working on yourself could literally be like, last week I made 20 calls, I'm making 150 this week, and that will make me better.
Yeah.
And when you work on yourself, you begin to realize what true wealth is to you. Because Raymond, I mean, we all are owning a couple of different businesses right now, but say that you wanted to be, you know, your dream is to own an ice cream store, but you didn't realize that till you were 60 years old because of all these things that had to fall into place for that to happen, and you worked on yourself to get to that answer. Whereas I have no desire to own an ice cream store, but maybe I develop in myself to the point where it's like, okay, I see that at a different age. But basically what I'm saying is when you start to work on yourself, what you want shows up versus what society defines as a popular, productive thing.
That's so true. Well, man, this conversation has been amazing. I appreciate you. There's been so much knowledge dropped. There's been so much if you're out there and you're trying to start something, this man has just poured his heart out to us to help us all get better. And there's so many lessons that we can learn from you, Raymond. I just appreciate you coming on here and really just pouring your heart out to us. I appreciate it. Do y'all have any more questions?
I got one more. So when the theme of our show is paving the way, what would you say to, not just to someone that wants to pave the way, their own way today, but specifically an individual that's attempting to pave the way, someone who's already started, someone who's really getting after it? What would you say would be the biggest thing for them to keep in mind to help their path become the most successful?
Well, I think y'all kind of hit on it just right before we got to that question, which is to work on yourself. And what is that really? To me, it's like, what is your dash going to be? Date of birth, date of death, the dash between. Mm-hmm. I don't want anybody at the end of on my obituary to say Raymond Phillips, bail bondsman or roofer. I would rather say Raymond Phillips, follower of Jesus Christ, right? Mm-hmm. So to me, if I'm going to work on myself, I need to work on myself spiritually, have a closer connection with God. And I think some of the other stuff just falls into place. But to be actively waiting, if you got a dream or a thought, an ice cream shop, whatever, to be actively pursuing that. And then to be real with yourself. Is it, because sometimes it's going to be, all right, that was a crazy idea. Or, hey, this is really going somewhere. But don't just sit back and wait to run the numbers, to talk with friends, have counsel with people like yourselves. This is going to give you just honest feedback. And then usually at the end of it, and I know you guys well enough to know you're going to tell me what you think, and it's going to be like, hey man, but I really don't know anything about ice cream chops. Yeah. But this is what I feel about it. Yeah. And so I think that's to work on yourself, just like what you said. What do you pour into yourself? What kind of books are you reading? I'm a self-help guy. I read very little fiction. Most of my stuff's just nonfiction. Usually it's how to win friends, influence people, the bait of Satan. How can I forgive people? How can I be forgiving? How can I be a better me? And I fail miserably at it a lot. But I know the right things to do. And I just got to exercise the right things to do. But some people just have no knowledge of what's right or wrong. They have no knowledge of whether this is going to be good or bad, whether this ice cream shop's going to open or close. What's it going to take? But I think it's what you had said is just work on yourself and be willing to give it away.
I like that.
I had a similar question too. Like with us being in our early 30s, a couple of us have kids, little kids. What would you tell yourself at 30 when you were starting all your businesses and all your ventures that you just mentioned you were doing? What would you tell Raymond at 30 now?
That's a good question, because I've said it, but I haven't said it thinking of it as 30. I would have worked harder on those things that I know that are working, because all of these businesses are working. They're creating income. So continue to work on those, expand. Don't be afraid of growth, and surround yourself with people that can know your strengths and your weaknesses. And I think that's one thing that I'm good at. Is two things. One is I'm good at time management. I get a lot done in a 12-hour day. If not, then I need to get up earlier or stay up later. There's time is not the problem. Mm-hmm. I either need to schedule better or I need to get up earlier or stay up later. For me to say that I don't have time to work out, that's malarkey. Mm-hmm. So true. And I don't know, I'm kind of going around a little bit with this, Rob, but you can do it. I sometimes say things like, I wish I could play the guitar. Well, I could, right? I'm just unwilling to put in the time and the effort that it takes to do it. So that's what I tell myself if I was younger, at 30. First of all, I would want to learn to play the guitar. I wish I could speak a foreign language, Spanish in particular. There's two gifts I said I was going to give my children, didn't do it, didn't follow through. And if I was at 30, I would say just those things is to keep pressing forward, to not be limited. Don't let your mind and the people around you limit you to what you can and can't do. And dream big, think big, and have action towards the big things.
That's money, dude.
That's heat. Awesome. That's good stuff. Well, we'll put a link for everything that Raymond does if you want to follow him. He's got Raymond's Roofing, he's got a Bell Bonds, he's got Patriot Pawn Shop in downtown Dallas, and he's just a good dude. So
hair salon.
got a hair
Wife's
salon.
got a hair salon.
So he's a true entrepreneur. Support him. We love him, and we're just so thankful that you came on, man, to be our first guest.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, guys.
Thanks for your time, man.
I hope it ended up okay.
It's been amazing.